Hi, I'm Gail Rubin. Stay tuned for our next episode of A Good Goodbye, Funeral Planning for Those Who Don't Plan to Die. Hi, I'm Gail Rubin, host and author of A Good Goodbye, Funeral Planning for Those Who Don't Plan to Die. Welcome to today's show, brought to you by the fine folks at French Funerals and Cremations. As the doyen of death, check out the pearls, I'm all about getting the funeral planning conversation started. A doyen is a woman who's considered senior in a group who knows a lot about a particular subject, and that would be me when it comes to the party no one wants to plan, a funeral or memorial service. By thinking about what you'd want in your funeral and having that conversation before there's a death or illness, you can reduce stress at a time of grief, minimize family conflict, save money, and create a meaningful, memorable, good goodbye. That's what this program is all about. Just as talking about sex won't make you pregnant, talking about funerals won't make you dead, and your family will benefit from the conversation. So let's get this conversation started. Our guests today are Buck Dyck, location manager with French Funerals and Cremations, and Tom Antram, CEO. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
The Cremation Association of North America tells us that in 1985, the cremation rate was 15% average of the US population. By 2007, that had gone up to 31%. And within 4 years, 2011, it went up to 41%. So what do you see going on here in terms of cremation?
You bet. It has continued to rise in my 20-year career in funeral service. And really, I think there's a number of different contributing factors for that. The first one is people's mobility. We are moving all over the country now as a society, and very rarely do we grow up in one town and stay with all of our family. That was the pattern in the 40s and 50s. The 60s really changed that for a lot. So because we're more mobile, we're seeing families choose to do cremation and maybe take mom or dad back to their hometown where they once had a family burial plot or something like that. But it gives them an opportunity that's a little easier to handle cremated remains versus a full casketed body, and we see that piece happening quite frequently. I think the other contributing factor is religious practices. It wasn't all that long ago that the Catholic Church still had a very strong stance against cremation. And as Vatican II Council passed the ability for cremation to take place for Catholics with some certain criterias, that really has opened the doors. There are so many Catholics in the world, and that is impacting our cremation rate across the board. I think those two things are the biggest contributing factors that we've seen.
Cost is also an issue.
You bet. I think another one of the issues that a lot of people will bring out is the perception that there's a great deal of cost difference between a burial and cremation. And in some cases it is. In other cases, depending on what a family may select to do, it could be very paralleled to a burial and a cremation option on how they choose to take care of their loved one. But what we have tried to do, and I think a lot of funeral homes are doing the same thing, is we talk about having a full continuum of care within our family of companies. And so at French, we have the traditional side, the French Funerals and Cremation that has been here for 105 years, but we also have a different company that we set up under our family brand, the Cremation Society of New Mexico, specifically to handle families that really want to keep things simple. And that way they're able to watch their costs, make sure that it's still something that is desirable for them to have, and gives them a nice way to honor their loved one.
So what actually happens with the process of cremation?
Well, there's the core pieces that occur when any family member experiences a death. First off, taking care of that loved one's body. We come out in the middle of the night to the home or hospital, wherever that person may have been being cared for, and bring that person back to the funeral home. After that would be making contact with the family, meeting with them, finding out their wishes, how they'd like us to proceed. Cremation, for me, cutting my teeth in funeral service in the 21st century has been as a normal thing as burial has been. And so a lot of the families I serve are choosing that option. Some of the other key pieces for it too are going to be legal logistics, paperwork and permitting that needs to be taken care of, obituaries.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that paperwork. That will vary from state to state.
It does.
But here in New Mexico, where this program originates, you have a cremation fee that the Office of the Medical Investigator charges. And I don't know what the fee would be in other states, but currently in this state, it's $125. And
that applies to anybody.
Everybody who's cremated.
Exactly.
And the reason they do that?
Well, part of one differentiator between cremation and casketed burial is the way that the body is treated. And for a physician to need to sign off on a death certificate saying that questions about that death have been resolved as far as they need to, and it is okay to proceed with caring for that person by cremation. Casketed burial can be done a little bit more quickly and does not require the same permit.
Well, right, because when you cremate a body, if there's criminal activity involved, you're destroying evidence.
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah.
There's no reversing the process, so the medical examiner's fee really is kind of a safety guard for that. They won't sign off on everything until all of the necessary tests have been done and are complete, and they feel confident that they will not need a body to go back and get any more evidence. And that's when we're able to get that permit and proceed.
Right. And in the procedure, you need a container before you can cremate a body. So it's got to be combustible.
Every person that's cremated needs to be in some type of container. Now, often you might think casket like a burial, and sometimes that does occur, depending again on a family's wishes. Oftentimes you have what are called alternative containers or cremation containers made out of wood or particle board or cloth, cardboard type materials that are cremated along with the person.
I heard that you could be cremated wrapped in banana leaves. Of course, we don't have those here in New Mexico, but
It'd be nice to have some. That
little
would mean we'd have some
creativity
rain,
there.
right?
right.
Yes.
So before a body is cremated, there are certain things that have to be done.
Correct. Big one being that the family members have to authorize that person to be cremated, and the law is specific about who can do that dependent upon the circumstances.
Also, the body needs to be identified. If the person has a pacemaker, that pacemaker needs to be removed because batteries will explode in the retort.
Correct.
Not good for that process.
Yes, yeah, not good for the retort. And what's the temperature range that bodies are cremated at?
Normal's about 1600 degrees, and it can vary person to person, but the general time frame is 1600 degrees for about 2.5 hours.
Okay.
The interesting thing with retorts today, even versus 20 years ago was a lot of manual process still to get the heat up to a certain temperature that would allow that to happen. But now it's all automated. And so literally once the deceased is placed into the chamber and the chamber's closed, it is weighting out the body mass, the weight of the deceased, and heating appropriately to that temperature that's going to be needed. And so it is, as Buck said, up to 1600 degrees Fahrenheit in a very intense process.
Well, and it's much more energy efficient with the kind of
Very much so.
monitoring
Right.
that you used to have to do manually.
Exactly.
And there are opportunities for families to actually have a ceremony sending the body into a retort.
There are. We have an opportunity for them to witness the cremation if they would prefer to do that. And we've offered that for a number of years now, and quite honestly, it came in response to what happened in Georgia about 7 years ago, where some people had chosen cremation, but ultimately there was a provider that did not do so. And so we started offering this as an opportunity for families to truly know. Just like we go to the graveside and we're able to see mom or dad be lowered into the ground, we can now watch the actual process of placing mom or dad into the retort. And in some cases, we've had families that have desired to start the retort. And so it gives them a little bit of sense of
push the
closure, to
button.
push the button and
Yeah.
have the machine be activated.
Yeah.
And so it's a nice way to do it. And again, back to some religious customs, we see some religions that this is the norm for them,
Buddhist
the Buddhist
and Hindu,
religion.
yeah.
Many times, we will have them all out at our facility that we have a chapel adjoining to the retort, and they'll have a small service, a gathering, their prayers, the chanting, that then is followed by placing the deceased into the retort itself, and it's very healing for them, and so it's a nice opportunity.
Great. We're going to take a short break, but when we return, we'll continue our conversation with Buck and Tom on cremation.
How can you eat like that?
Relax, dude. I'm freaking dead. It's one of the perks. I can eat whatever the hell I want.
How do I get in on it?
What, the whole death thing?
Yeah.
First off, I mean, look at what you're eating. No wonder you've lived this long. Feed this to the village cow, all right? Bring him a glass of your finest expired milk. Oh, before you go checking out, do you have a will? Any funeral arrangements, plans like that?
Did you?
No, and because of that, now my family's in turmoil. They're fighting, bickering over money. Now they're dead broke. Do some real planning, okay? Before you figure out your exit strategy. See? Everybody's doing it.
I can't wait to get started.
I've never seen anybody dying to die like you. Good luck, kid.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Buck Dyck and Tom Antram from French Funerals and Cremations. So let's continue the conversation about cremation. What are some misconceptions people have about cremation?
Quite a few come up on and off the clock. I get questions from people about that. A lot of people often think it's a very immediate process, and as we had talked about with the permitting and legal paperwork that needs to come along, you're looking at an average of anywhere from 2 or 3 days before that occurs to even up to a longer time period, again, depending on the situation of that family. Additionally, I think a big one that comes out is I have the power of attorney. That expires at death.
Yes.
So they can't sign for that person, so we go back to what the law states as far as who is able to sign for them to be cremated.
And you can self-authorize your own cremation if you plan
Can.
ahead.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And we love that when it's happened that way, because it takes out a whole element of research that it's involved in finding the correct person to authorize cremation. Gail, I'd also add to Buck that another misconception is what cremains are, or cremated remains really are. And as a disclaimer, I'm going to get a little bit graphic. Is that okay?
That's okay.
All right.
Go for it.
So in the cremation process, literally, all of our body, our skin, our hair, the fluids that are inside of us are fully incinerated in that process. And all that's left, all that remains, is our bone and our bone fragment pieces. And so that is truly what cremated remains are. And we hear out in social events, or when we have students that come in, that we provide many classes for CNM and UNM and many other educational institutions, where they want to talk about what cremated remains are, and many of them think, well, yeah, my hair is going to be in there, or and that couldn't be the furthest thing from the truth. So it is a misconception that we talk about frequently.
And then those bone fragments are pulverized, and
Correct.
any metal,
Into very
hip
small pieces.
replacements, fillings are
Correct. Those are all
screened
removed
out.
and
Yeah.
screened out. And,
Yeah.
and as you said, pacemakers are removed before the process,
Yes.
hopefully. But other things do go through the cremation process and then are removed.
Yeah. And a lot of people want to scatter ashes. What advice would you offer in terms of scattering cremated remains?
You know, I think scattering cremated remains is an option that many families like to have, and we've seen it in our business many, many times, and even in our own families. And so one of the things that we always talk about is making sure you have everything lined up. And so if you're going to plan on scattering, say, in the Sandia Mountains, there's a permitting process that you can go through, and getting a hold of the county that you're planning on doing it in, just to make sure that everything is good, is a good, safe bet.
It's a safe bet, but you know,
Not always happen.
there are no cremation police.
Correct, and not always going to happen. We recently had a public official that had chose to do that, and they wanted to make sure that they had all the appropriate documentation just in case.
Yeah.
And so there is that piece. The other thing, more important than getting any piece of documentation to allow you to spread or scatter your cremated remains, is where you're planning on doing it. And I think many times we forget that once we scatter, they're gone. And so just having the thought process of, do I want to go back to a place where I know Dad is every single time? And so we often encourage families, if they say, I want to scatter, that's a great option. We can help facilitate that with you, but I encourage you to take a small piece of cremated remains and take them to a cemetery, a place that is permanent, a place that you can go visit. That way you still have some closure through that process, because we have so many stories, Gail, of families that have done the scattering and then later regret it. And one, for instance, a little brief story, if I may. We had a person, a friend of ours, and also an employee of French a number of years ago that scattered her father with her mother just outside their family home. They lived on some acreage up in I believe, Idaho or Oregon. And from the kitchen window, Dad was scattered around the tree. And about a year after his death, she was home visiting Mom, and her mom, one morning very early, went out to the tree and started digging around. And when her daughter asked her, Mom, what are you doing? She said, I can't stand that he's out here in the cold. So again, the mind starts some pieces with you, and you just have to think about all the implications that may mean for your family either now or later on.
Well, and I know you've set up cremation garden resting places, including the Lobo section, where Lobo fans can rest in eternity together.
Yes, yes. Go Lobos.
Well, let's talk about if you want to keep cremated remains with you. We have some urns and jewelry from a company called Shine On Brightly, which is based in North Carolina, and they work with artisans to create very special things like this wisteria urn. If you're, you had a mother or grandmother who liked wisteria, you could work with the artist or to create whatever favorite flower for that person for their remains to rest in. There's this other smaller urn is a Serenity urn, and that could be appropriate for splitting up among family members. Now there's something else that you can do. Oh, and here's a very tiny metal keepsake urn. So again, for splitting up among family members, it's got a nice little rock on top of there. Another thing you can do with cremated remains is work them into glass artwork. This and this are both paperweights, and the white design in them would be created by swirling in the cremated remains of a loved one. Doesn't take a lot.
No.
So you would still have remains that you could inter somewhere or keep in an urn or whatever. Other glass things, this is a pendant that would have cremated remains within and on the back. And even memorial jewelry that doesn't necessarily have to involve cremated remains. This is probably a little hard to see, but there are photos of people on this bracelet. So it's a little keepsake bracelet. And you all brought some. This red one is made here in New Mexico, yes?
Right here in Albuquerque.
And it's made out of wood. And thummies. Let's talk about thummies. These are little teeny, the thumbprint of the deceased.
Literally the thumbprint, yes.
Before they're cremated.
Yes, yes. That would be important.
Another good time to take prints.
Yes.
Yeah. So lots of different things that you can do artistically with cremated remains to keep them around. So those items are primarily from Shine On Brightly, and you might want to check those out. But then, you can also do other creative things with them. They can be worked into reef balls and improve the marine environment. You can make them into fireworks and
even go to space now.
Go to space from the spaceport here in New Mexico.
That's right.
Yeah. So what are some of the more memorable services you've seen done with cremated remains of loved ones?
I'll tell a brief story, and then we'll let Beck go forward. A number of years ago, we had a young man that had passed away here in Albuquerque that was cremated, and the family wanted to do something that was indicative of his life. And so they chose to have his services at the Rio Grande Nature Center, where we had an outdoor tent placed up in the evening, which was his favorite time of night, to go out and listen to birds. And so the family had little stuffed animal birds that each had their own chirping as you squeezed them. And so they would bring those out and give those to the guests that arrived. It was just very unique and a tribute to him that was something very important for him and something his family really remembered. And so that was one that has stuck with me over the years that just truly reflected his life.
I got to go to one at the biopark in the Japanese garden.
Yes.
That was gorgeous.
Beautiful scenery all the way around. So that's one. And one other one, and actually I have a little piece that if I can show you this, if that's all right.
Okay, sure.
This is actually a stone carving from a Lakota Indian.
Oh, wow.
And he passed away, this gentleman passed away in 1999. And we had a service where he was part Indian and also part very Western, musket loading hunter, loved doing those things. And so his service was outdoors again at the cemetery, and they had the 2 Lakota Indians came down from South Dakota area and did their ceremonial piece and actually presented me with this for helping him move into the afterlife. And also his Association of Musket Loaders came and they actually gave him a 21-gun salute send-off.
Oh, that's
So just a
wonderful.
beautiful tribute to a unique life and just a great story. And I know Buck has some stories
Oh,
too.
sure. You know, and some of the things that really stand out to me are the people that attend, because a big part of that celebration of that person's life are all the people that were involved in them. I had a family member of people I was serving, passed away, and the family, we had talked about the caskets and the containers that they were in. Well, this gentleman was in one of like a felt type container. He was a younger person actually too, as well, but a big participation piece that people seem to get a lot of satisfaction out of, and kind of coming with new traditions, whereas maybe something like this would have been pretty frowned upon years ago. People came up and signed messages right on the cremation casket itself. His body was actually at the service before he was cremated. And then people also left things, flowers, notes that all stayed with him. The family requested they be cremated along with him, and you could see people got a lot of comfort and celebrating that person's life that way.
Well, and one of the things about cremation is that it gives the family more flexibility in scheduling a celebration of that person's life.
Right.
If it happens at some point that, it's the dead of winter and, travel is difficult or kids are in school or whatever, having a cremation and then scheduling a memorial service at a time when everybody can come together, it gives you that flexibility.
Exactly. And you want to allow the family to have the opportunity to be there, because that's an important part to say goodbye to someone. And so you're right, cremation does give a very flexible time frame for people to do so.
Yeah. Any last tips you'd like to offer on the topic?
I think as you think about cremation and any type of funeral planning, it's something that all of us are faced with, whether you're 99 or 20 or even younger. We know that at some point we're going to die, and we're going to be faced with taking care of our parents or our grandparents or a spouse or another loved one. And so it's important to make sure that you're thinking ahead.
And your
that's the key.
pets. Let's quick word
Beautiful,
about pets.
yes.
Very often pets are cremated.
They are,
Correct.
and as part of our continuum of care under the French family of companies, we have Best Friends Pet Cremation Services and Best Friends Forever Cemetery. And it's, we cremate about 3,000 pets a year. And it's something that is very important to those. I'm an animal lover myself, have 2 dogs, and they have their cemetery plots already taken care of.
But you can actually be buried or niched with your pet at Best Friends.
You
Which
can.
Which is pretty unique in the country. I only know of one other cemetery where you can do that.
Exactly, and we have some families that absolutely love it and others that may think it's strange, but that's what's wonderful about the world is we can find places to honor somebody's life very uniquely all the way around.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much to our special guests today, Buck Dyck and Tom Antram with French Funerals and Cremation, and a big thank you to the French family of companies for supporting this program. Join us next week as we discuss cemetery questions and answers. You can find out more about today's topic as well as a lot of other stuff at my website, agoodgoodbye.com. Remember, talking about sex won't make you pregnant. Talking about funerals won't make you dead. Start a conversation today.
Proper estate planning enables you to pass your possessions and your assets to the people and organizations that you care about. By planning with a living trust, you could avoid the high cost of probate and minimize taxation. The attorneys at Morris Hall have been helping thousands of clients pass their assets as they intended. To schedule your free consultation, call us at 505-889-0100 or visit us at morristrust.com.
A Good Goodbye, Funeral Planning for Those Who Don't Plan to Die is a light touch on a serious subject. The book has everything you need to know before you go. A Good Goodbye helps you reduce stress and family conflict, save money, and create a meaningful, memorable good goodbye. It's available in paperback and all ebook formats through online retailers and at agoodgoodbye.com. Start a conversation today.
Why are we talking about this at the dinner table? Just put my ashes in a coffee can or something. Please pass the salt, dear.
Can I help you, ma'am?
Yeah. Which can would you recommend putting my mom's ashes in?
I think I heard ashes.
I'm sorry, my mom's cremated remains.
That sounds the same.
Your mom didn't even like coffee. She drank tea.
You can't avoid your funeral. Pre-plan and take the burden off someone else.
Hi, I'm Gail Rubin, host and author of A Good Goodbye, Funeral Planning for Those Who Don't Plan to Die, and creator of The Newly Dead Game. The Newly Dead Game is like the classic TV show The Newlywed Game, but the questions test how well you know someone else's last wishes. It's a fun way to get the funeral planning conversation started. For more information about the Newly Dead Game, visit agoodgoodbye.com.